Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. What grateful soul is there who would not render his loving service to such a great master as the personality of Godhead? The Lord can be easily pleased by spotless devotees who resort exclusively to Him for protection, though the unrighteous man finds it difficult to appropriate Him. Purport. Every living entity, especially persons in the human race, must feel grateful for the benedictions offered by the grace of the Supreme Lord. Anyone, therefore, with a simple heart of gratefulness must be Krishna conscious and offer devotional service to the Lord. Those who are actually thieves and rogues do not recognize or acknowledge the benedictions offered to them by the Supreme Lord. They cannot render Him devotional service. Ungrateful persons are those who do not understand how much benefit they are deriving by the arrangement of the Lord. They enjoy the sunshine and moonshine, and they get water free of charge. Yet they do not feel grateful for simply going and enjoying these gifts of the Lord. Therefore they must be called thieves and rogues. Tam sukaradyam ritubir ananya sharnayan ribi kritagya ko naseveta duraradyam asadubi. What grateful soul is there who would not render his loving service to such a great master as the personality of Godhead? The Lord can be easily pleased by spotless devotees who resort exclusively to Him for protection, though the unrighteous man finds it difficult to appropriate Him. Namo Vishnu Varaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shinivadi Paskatyade Sattara. In the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions who are the divine persons and who are the demoniac. And he describes the demoniac beginning with pravritim cha, diritim cha, jana navidur asura, nisosham napichachra nasatyam teshu vidite. That those who are demoniac, asuras, they don't know what's to be done and what's not to be done. Neither cleanliness nor truthfulness nor proper behavior is found in them. So these are some of the qualities of religiousness. Especially Prabhupada mentions two most important Brahminical qualities are truthfulness, are cleanliness and truthfulness. And yet, of course, there are other qualities we know in this age of Kali, other religious principles that are not followed, such as austerity, mercy. But naturally, if one is not truthful, and truthfulness means principally to understand that one is subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Every other idea besides that is more or less untruthful. The foundational principle of truthfulness is that we're servants of Krishna, and everything here belongs to Him. Otherwise, it's like the group of thieves who robbed a bank, and they go to their hideout, and the head thief stands up and tells all the fellow thieves, my dear fellow thieves, you all did a fantastic job of robbing the bank. So please, now that we've done such a nice service robbing the bank, now please let us all do one thing. Let us divide it up honestly. So they're all thieves, but now they want to become honest thieves. So modern society, even the so-called people who are interested in the truth and want justice, they're all thieves, stealing from God, and therefore they're all being punished by the material nature. No matter if they're so-called good people or bad people, they're all being punished by material nature, and therefore their existence is bad. As a spiritual soul, they may be good, every soul is good, but they're making the wrong choices, so their activities are bad. And what is this? Asatyam pravitim cha nivritim cha. They don't know what's to be done, and they don't know what's not to be done. And generally, according to the mode of nature, sometimes they follow the laws of God, and sometimes they don't. But usually in the age of Kali, they think what is to be done is not to be done. And what is not to be done, they think that's what everyone's supposed to do. Therefore, they're always striving in the wrong direction. Pravitim jana ritim cha jana na vidur asura. So this is a definition of an asura. Because asuras, they take guidance from Shastra, and therefore they have some idea, at least what Krishna is asking them to do. They may not fully understand, because after all, under the spell of illusion, no one could actually have firm faith in Krishna. That's what it means to be under illusion. And therefore, most people have no interest in Krishna consciousness, because they have no faith at all that it actually has any value, it has any reality to it. Therefore, even if they hear that they're not their body, that their body is changing, but they're not changing, still they won't accept it. Now, if we have some idea of reality, basic principle reality, we can see that our body is changing. But we ourselves within the body, we're not changing. Therefore, some element of faith has to be developed by hearing from Krishna, that he's not simply espousing some abstract philosophy that no one can understand, that has nothing to do with our lives, or that he's espousing that we're all the supreme controller, which is obviously, we can't even control one atom in our body. So how can we be the supreme controller? Even Hiranyakashipu, after so many years of the demigods, so many thousands of years, trying to control his senses, and yet he could not control the fact that he had to die. Therefore, what to speak of ourselves? We can't control anything in the material world. We have a capacity to desire, and the actual controller, Krishna, he can fulfill that desire through his material nature, and therefore it appears that we're controlling something, but we're not the independent controllers. We depend upon Krishna and his material nature for our activities. All we can do is desire. Now, if we don't know what's desirable, what's not desirable, according to Krishna, because after all, if we're eternal, what would be desirable is to realize we're eternal. Our main anxiety is not what the price of gold is, or who won the election. The basic anxiety is we have to leave this body, and therefore we're in anxiety about abhiveshitaha, the fact that we're absorbed in the material concept of life, and that we don't know where we're going after this body. Therefore, we're always in anxiety about death. And the eating, eat Johnny, if you don't eat, you'll die, you'll starve. Oh, my football team lost, and therefore we're weak. We might die soon. It's all centered around the fear of death, because that's the main fear. Jana vidur asura nasocham. But if our minds are cloudy, if they're full of lust, anger, greed, we're always in anxiety, then how can we have any truthfulness? Because the very lust, anger, and greed that we've cultivated is all based upon rebelliousness against Krishna. Nasocham napichach nasatyam teshu vidyate. So nasocham napichacharo, they don't, that's the same thing, they don't know what to do, and they're unclean in consciousness and habits, and they're always untruthful, because their very existence, trying to lord it over, trying to control Krishna's energy, trying to exploit others, is all based upon a lie, that we're the supreme and that we can do as we like. Therefore Krishna says, Satyam apratishtam te jagadohoranishram aparashparam sambhutyam kemanya kamahaitukam. They say, who are they? The demons, the very people we just said before, who have cloudy minds and who are always untruthful, trying to present themselves as the controller, although they can't control even an atom in this world. They say that this world is unreal. What does it mean that the world is unreal? They say it's just a phantasmagoria. But if it's a phantasmagoria, why do they work so hard? To get their scholar, their degree, or to get money, or to do anything, if it's all unreal. Why do they take it so seriously, something that they claim is unreal? There's no God in control. Well, why does the sun rise at a certain time and set at a certain time? It's just by accident. Everything is an accident, except you're getting a PhD degree that you work so hard for. Everything else is an accident. It's an accident that you eat food, you have no idea how it's being digested. Still it gets digested by accident. It gets assimilated all by accident. The unnecessary parts are eliminated by accident. Well, if it's an accident, if you're so sure it's an accident, well, why don't you make a machine to do something similar? And if you can't, then you're just bluffing. You don't know what, you have no control. Something's going on with all your intelligence. You can't figure out what it is. You can't even duplicate it. So therefore you're just living a lie, that's all. Claiming something that you're not. As Prabhupada was talking to one professor from a university, and the professor was an Indology professor. And the Indology professor asked Srila Prabhupada, what is Indology? So Prabhupada said, turned to Swarup Damodar Prabhu at that time, and said, who was a PhD in chemistry, and said, this man is a professor at the University of Indology, the study of Indian philosophy, and he's asking me, what is Indology? And he's supposed to be a professor. So what do you think, Swarup Damodar? Oh, he's a cheater, Prabhupada. He's a cheater. He claims to be an expert at something he doesn't even know what it means. So, they say the world is unreal, no foundation, no God. It produces sex desire, because that's what they're motivated by. And has no other cause than lust. They see people working simply gratify their senses, and therefore that's the cause of all activity, as far as they're concerned. Whether it be in the human form of life, or the animal species of life, or lower species of life, it's all motivated by motivated. The world moves by sense gratification. There's no other cause. So, following such conclusions and loss of themselves, the demoniac create horrible, unbeneficial works meant to destroy the world. Therefore, religion begins with the following: mercy, austerity, truthfulness, and cleanliness. Truthfulness meaning to accept everything here belongs to Krishna and to be grateful that He's given us these things, and therefore to utilize them in His service. Then one will be under Krishna's protection, and the other elements such as lust, or we could say illicit sex, intoxication, and meat eating, one won't be impelled to do these things for so-called material happiness. Then if one can control one becomes purified of these lower tendencies, then one will naturally seek out some material happiness in the material world from what's available in a religious way, following the laws of nature. The Shudras, those who realize they're inflicted by lust, by anger, by greed, and therefore they're impelled to have illicit sex, unrestricted sex life, take intoxications, and eat animals, and speculate. They realize that we're impelled to do these things, and therefore they try to work in such a way to at least regulate their sinful activities. But the mudhas, they take great joy in performing sinful activity. They decry the very existence of God or any restraint. But if one becomes a Narada, one becomes purified and therefore takes birth in a Vaishya family, where he has an opportunity to protect cows, live in harmony with nature, have clean air, fresh water. These are basic principles for material happiness. Who can be happy with improper food? When you breathe the air, you choke. When you drink the water, you're poisoned. Who could be happy in such a situation? So the Vaishyas, without protecting the cow, there's no question of not producing a hellish civilization. Although people think it's primitive cow protection or bull protection. They don't realize that without that protection, all that that's going to do is produce a hellish situation in society. Of course, people are used to being in hell. When Prabhupada was asked, when he went to London one time, the reporters asked him, "Do you believe in hell?" And Prabhupada said, "Yes." And then the reporters said, "Well, where's hell?" So Prabhupada said, "London is hell." So we're living in hell, but we've gotten used to it. To different degrees of hellish existence. The more the factories are there, the more the water is polluted, the more the air is polluted, the more the ether is polluted, the more the food is polluted, the more hellish is the situation. To the extent that in cities you can't walk down the block without fearing you're going to be robbed. So you have to carry some weapon with you and hope that your weapon is better than the other person's weapon. And they call that civilization progress. Big city, and everyone lives in fear. Fear of not getting enough, that there'll be some disaster and they won't be protected, they won't get food, they won't get water, they won't get anything. They'll just get promises. Don't worry, we're coming next week, we'll save you. So therefore, if one is intelligent enough to understand, at least in the material world, what really is necessary here and what's unnecessary, then one can make some progress in Krishna consciousness, towards higher consciousness. But if one takes birth in such a family and then decides, let me utilize this opportunity, yes, I have so many cows, let me slaughter them and eat without doing any work, and let me have as much sex as possible, as much sense gratification, take intoxication, eat, drink, and be merry. Then one becomes a Naradama. One utilizes one's intelligence to create even more of a hellish situation than if one was simply a mudha, a foolish person. But if one works sincerely, properly, going to Shastras, a Vaishya, then one can get a higher consciousness by proper association with the Brahmanas. And therefore the result is that one will actually become inquisitive, if there's something beyond nice sense gratification in the material world, nice, peaceful life here. And then one may hear about the heavenly planets and about the pious activities one has to perform, the sacrifices one has to perform to Vishnu in order to go there, and therefore one's inquisitiveness may change one's activities to perform more sacrifice rather than just living a happy, peaceful life in this material world, so-called happy and peaceful. So one becomes a gignasu, inquisitive about something higher. But if one comes to that platform of jignasu and utilizes it to try to figure out how to gratify one's senses even better than a normal person can do. How to speculate so that one is able to convince everyone that sense gratification is the goal of life, that there's nothing beyond that. So one becomes a maya priti jnana. One's so-called intelligence is just stolen by illusion. One becomes a big recognized scholar, and all he does is try to convince everyone that there is no God except for him. He's the highest person in the universe. But if one is a little bit more intelligent and actually inquires from the scripture and from the Guru Sadhana and Shastra and follows it, then he becomes realized, a jnani, Brahma Jignasya, what is that? By birth, Janmana Jayate Sudra. By birth, everyone is born Shudra. Janmana Jayate Shudra. And then by some samskara bhavat dvija, by some samskara, one may become twice born. Realize that there's something more than the material conceptions of life. And then by studying the Veda Bhata, one may become a Brahmana, Brahmajana Titi Brahmana. And the best of all the Brahmins in the mode of goodness is one who's realized he actually is Brahman. But if one becomes a Brahmin in a little bit of the mode of goodness and declares that all this knowledge is my knowledge, it's coming from me, everyone should surrender to me, then he becomes an Asura Bhavam Ashritya. He becomes a demon. Therefore, there are four kinds of people who never approach Krishna. Those who are mudhas, who are foolish, those who are naradamas, those who are sinful, those who are maya priti jnanas, those who are deceitful, and the asura bhavam ashritya, the atheists. They never approach Krishna. Instead, they make their own lives. They mislead themselves and they mislead others. But those who practice the regular principles of religion, who act piously, who conquer sinful reactions, they can accept devotional service. And then who gradually come to the pure knowledge of the personality of Godhead and meditate and trance upon Him. So that's what the sages, what the devotees go. They teach how to be grateful that this world comes from Krishna, and He's giving us an opportunity in the human form of life to go to revive our relationship with Him, to become honest. And therefore that's what they propagate. Don't become a demon, become a devotee. Use your intelligence. See that your real problem is not so many superficial material things. The real problem is our bodily concept of life. And therefore that creates all kinds of anxiety and fear in us, which means we can never be happy. Until we get free from this material concepts of life, realize our eternal identity in relation with Krishna, and therefore live an actual happy existence full of bliss and knowledge forever. Anything short of that is simply suffering to one degree or another. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Can you tell us more about this principle of truthfulness, especially in devotee life, and what does it mean for like a beginner devotee and senior devotee truthfulness?
Truthfulness means to accept that we're Krishna's God and we're His servant. And as much as we actually understand how to serve Krishna, as much as we accept His directions, His instructions, then we become truthful in our activities, in our body, mind, and words. As much as, so therefore Krishna says, Chividana Rakasidam Dwaram Nashitam Atmanaha Kama Kroda Tatalobas Tasmat Etam Trayam Chajet. There are three gates leading to hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane person should become free from these three gates because they lead to the degradation of the self. Etanya Pi itan pita karmani, no, itan vimukta kantya, tamo dvaras trivinara, achara itima shayasatoyati paramgatim. That anyone who accepts these, who gets free from these three gates, actually, more or less, performs activities which are conducive to self-realization, thus he gradually attains the supreme destination. And then yakshasra vidim utsrija vartate kamakarata asasidim avapnoti nasukam paramgatim. That one who doesn't follow Shastra and acts whimsically attains neither peace nor happiness of the supreme destination. Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya karya vyastito kyatva shastri vidanoktam karma kartum viharasi. Therefore one should know what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of Shastra, and knowing such regulations one should act so that one can become gradually purified. What does it mean to be purified? Purified of this ignorance of our relation with Krishna, this untruthful identity, this false ego we've acquired, which makes our very existence a lie, an illusion, a pretense. So as much as we understand Shastra and its conclusion and follow it, then we become honest. Honest means we dedicate everything in the service of Krishna. That's honesty. Otherwise we're thieves.
Because it seems like a new generation of so-called devotees, they are not so inclined following Shastra. So in a sense, how can we make someone be aware that he's not truthful? Is there any way that we can assist?
And live life in Krishna consciousness is probably the best thing. And become happy. That's the truth. We're supposed to be full of bliss, knowledge eternally. So, if we become Krishna conscious, then people will see that we're living in the truth. Otherwise, if you tell people they're a liar, they won't understand what we're talking about. We won't understand what we're talking about either. It's beyond, you need some background intelligence and information to understand what we're talking about. We see what's the difference between being truthful and not truthful. It's not that you simply cut down a tree, someone asks who did this, and you say, I did it. That's not, it's a sense, one kind of truthfulness, but that's not what we're talking about. Anything else? Hvala, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.